I'm going solo today. I'm speaking of strong style, talking the last 4 nights of the G1, going back from July 25th all the way to July 30th. We're going to talk about some amazing matches with Takeshita, Shota Umino, Shingo Takagi. No Gabe Kidd. Again, no Gabe Kidd. But we got plenty to talk about. You got me. You got Jeremy Finestone. You've got 4 nights of the G1. And you've got, speaking of strong style. How we doing, everybody? I'm Jeremy Finestone, and you are watching and listening to Speaking of Strong Style. I want to thank you for joining me today. Stephen Conway is off visiting family, as we encourage on this show to spend as much time with family as possible because, that's important. So he's off doing that. And so you got me today. And as we said in the intro, I'm going to talk about 4 nights of this thing, talk about the layout of the tournament, how everything's going, the vibes, attendance, all that kind of stuff. And you're just welcome to come along with me and BS with me and, ask me questions, be a part of the show. You know the drill by now. So, part of the Fight Game Media Network. We have many, many shows here. We have the Power Bomb shows that air on Sunday morning, afternoon, depending on what time zone that you're in. 1 o'clock Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. The Dynamite Show, which is a deconstruction of AEW Dynamite on Wednesday night with Paul Fontaine and Jeff Hawkins. The Takedown with also Paul Fontaine and Garrett Gonzalez. And this is all born of the Fight Game podcast with Garrett Gonzalez and Jean LaRocco out of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. And if you've been listening, you will have noticed that I managed to get recaps onto Wrestling Observer Live, which I don't know how it happened, but it managed to happen. And so if you're joining me here, wanting to know about New Japan, feel free to join the comments or whatever, and we can chat about that and got questions or whatnot. But thank you for joining us. And yeah, life has been good. Playing a little bit of Zelda, spring cleaning the apartment this week, hanging out with the dogs. Everything's good. And then I had a chance to watch something like 14 matches from the G1 and 20 matches, something like that. With the Gabe Kidd forfeit, it's like 18, something like that. But on the whole, I thought they were really good matches, at least 2 a night that you could really count on, and the floor is really high. So even if the matches aren't your thing or, you're just not feeling it that night, and there was a couple nights where I wasn't feeling it, but they were still good matches, you're not feeling like you're wasting your time. Although the attendance on some of these will make you think that they're not seeing a whole lot of star power here. And we'll get into that as well. I think this bears really positively for the future as long as they can create a guy in which the audience is here for. The roster is deep. They just don't have a leaderboard, if that makes any sense. So, first off, I wanted to shout out Paul Fontaine. On the Dynamite show, he mentioned our show, and I would have invited him on, but he is notoriously behind on watching shows. He's only watched about 4 nights of the G1. And so when he got a chance to talk about it last night on the show, he mentioned some matches that he thought were really good. And he's only 4 nights in, but he said that Kidd and Takeshita the first night was going to be a very tough match to beat. And I think at some point, personally, it was to beat. And I look forward to seeing if he stands by that through the rest of this. Taichi and Tanahashi. Takeshita and ELP, Taichi and Uemura, Taichi and Finley, and then on night 4, Shota and Zack Sabre Jr. I said earlier on that I thought Taichi was the early MVP of this tournament, and I think Paul kind of agreed with that. So if you want to hear more of his takes and all that stuff, check out the Dynamite show, check out the Takedown, all shows on the Fight Game Network, and he's got plenty of insight that's great for that. So we got a couple of comments here. Let's check that out. Zach Minger says happy National Chili Dog Day, and right on, happy National Chili Dog Day. I'm a burger guy, but if you like your wieners, good for you. Fernando Zayas, what up, fellas? Just me today, but what up, Fernando? Colin Matthews says Takeshita and Zack Sabre Jr. was fantastic. Oh, we're going to get there. Fernando says, yes, there is a lot of talent on the roster, like I was just previously saying. And he also says the G1 has been excellent. Thank you, Fernando, for all that information and feedback. Keep it out with me today, and I'll share with you what you're thinking and what we're thinking and all that stuff. So, all right, so we had 4 nights of the G1, and let's get to that first night of action. We had 5 matches that night. This was A block action. The first match that we had was Oleg Bolton defeating Sonata in just under 10 minutes. And, Bolton Oleg has an aggressive style, and he's a powerhouse and he wants to take a guy down. Sonata doesn't want to do any of that stuff. He doesn't want to take the power moves. He doesn't want to do this. So you can imagine what this was the big guy chasing the small guy. And eventually, there were some spots where the work rate was good. I don't want to undercut Sonata in all this. He has been working very, very hard despite some limitations being in his neck and his arm. And he's managed to make his matches somewhat work rate friendly and entertaining. With that said, this match was fine. It ended with the kamikaze, as it should have. And we moved on with all of our day. The next one was Yuya Uemura and Callum Newman. Uemura defeated Newman in just over 10 minutes. I would call this also aggressively fine. Newman's whole mission statement through this G1 has, as he stated, to make an impact and to show up and show out, because realistically, nobody really expected him to win, and he has been booked not to win this tournament, and he is very much just a guy. So he's wrestling this to pop people, to be aggressive, to show he's got more to offer. And at this point in the tournament, you kind of know what Newman is. And if you like Newman and you enjoy him, this is a great match for him because he's just going for it. And then you got Yuya Uemura. And Yuya Uemura understands the mission right now. This guy is the babyface of all babyfaces. He's got a little bit of dye in his hair. He's got the heat storm. He's got these Ricky Steamboat-like babyface moves, and he just looks good. He just looks crisp. And everything about what he's doing just feels like he's the guy. And one of the worst things that happened to him was that elbow injury, because I'm wondering what he'd be doing right now if he wasn't held back. Would it still feel like Yota Tsuji was the presumptive front runner, or would that 5 months have had him booked in weird feuds leading up to Wrestle Kingdom rather than, the dream spot that you really wanted him to be in? Because he came back in February, and it really hasn't been until now where it's just like, oh yeah, this dude is good. This dude is real good. And so he's coming out. He's coming out with that fire, and every opportunity he's got to show up and show out, he just kind of made Newman not the star of this match. Yuya ended up winning with the deadbolt suplex, as he's been wont to do, and we are there. Brad says Yuya is very good, but it's too bad he's saddled with an Elvis impersonator gimmick. That's brutal. I didn't see it as an Elvis impersonator gimmick. Now I kind of do. The Yuya is the honky tonk man is a besmirching of one Yuya Uemura, Brad. And I want you to think about what you've done. All right. Next up, we had Evil versus Taichi. That was a torture match. Evil didn't really have a whole lot of people to count on in this besides Dick Togo and Don Foley. What I meant to say is Taichi didn't have a whole lot of people to count on with this until in the middle of the match, one young lion, Masatori Yasuda, got involved with drop kicks, punches, aggressive, elbows to Don Fale, which takes a little bit of heave and a hoe to make an impact on one Don Fale. So eventually, it didn't make any difference whatsoever. After tongues of House of Torture antics. And I'm going to tell you guys, there are plenty of people in the chat, there are plenty of people who are listening to this that know exactly what I'm saying when I say the House of Torture antics. This is what this was. It was more designed to protect Taichi, which is a good thing. Instead of like losing clean to Evil in a clean match, it was a lot of protective BS. And right now with Taichi, I think they got something with him. And I think this was probably the right play. So it was nearly wasn't nearly as bad as you would think, but there was a bunch of silliness. Colin Matthews says, I haven't watched one Evil or Sonata match. Colin, I know where you're coming from on this, but I absolutely implore you to watch Evil versus Sonata because it is delightful. You know what it is, but the way that they do it, you might know who wins, might not matter, but you should probably check that one out because I thoroughly enjoyed it. And for House of Torture crap, it was all right with me. So, all right, where are we at? We got Yota Tsuji defeating Ryohei Oiwa in 1343. But I would say it was more like Yota Tsuji survived Ryohei Oiwa. These two, I believe it was the first match that they've ever had with each other on the main roster in a singles form. And boy, howdy, did they want to prove that who was the top dog in this one. And, you know, it's Yota Tsuji's time. It really does feel like he's got a lot of momentum. But Ryohei Oiwa was coming, you know, and the one guy that I'd worry about for Ryohei Oiwa at this point is actually Shota Umino, because those two guys are competing for the beefiest beef on the roster based off of how much mass that they're putting on. Rocky mentioned that he thought Shota Umino put on like 25 pounds of muscle, and I wasn't sure if he's kidding or not. Sure feels like he wasn't kidding. So you got Ryohei Oiwa and him, and they got this big meaty meat guys, and they're young, and I just like it. I like it a lot. I don't know, like if you're gonna put on a bunch of mass and you're just gonna toss a bunch of guys around, like this is the way you want to do it. So Brad said we're gonna run this back. Yasuda going after House of Torture was wild. As commentary brought up, young lions aren't supposed to go after other talent. It's interesting that they're doing the story. Well, let's touch on that. So you've got Daiki Nagai going with the unaffiliated. So it just feels like this is graduation point. You know, it's like this is the Yasuda is no longer going to be a young lion at the end of this, and maybe on the road 2 shows of Power Struggle or whatever the shows are after this. I know that Blue Justice is on the 7th of September, but I can't say for sure what else is on there. Maybe that's time, you know, like Daiki Nagai, Yasuda. I'm seeing some of the others are starting to show a little bit of fire. What's the one that's going after Hartley Jackson all the time? He's making me happy. So let's see, which one is that? Oh, it's not Shomikado. It's the other one. Blanking on the name right now. Oh, well, anyways. Jeremy Orr says, I really don't understand House of Torture. Like, why don't the refs kick them out in House of Torture Chief? Please help me understand. It's the sanctity of the match. They don't want to throw the match out. Like, if they can avoid throwing the match out, they'll want to avoid it. The refs are trained to, you know, withstand a little bit of abuse, and House of Torture will certainly abuse them. And there have been instances that they are going to disqualify them. But the whole conceit is to get someone to be booed without thinking that they're cool. And to me, House of Torture has to be that objectified bad guy group. It's the Snidely Whiplash. It's the mustache twirling bad guys, where they're just so evil that they make your skin crawl, and everything that they do just makes you frustrated and gets you to ask that question and gets you to ask that question about why the refs won't do it. It's part of the business concept of the sport, and that's how I've watched it out. Brad, I want to thank you. Murashima is the one that's been going after Harley Jackson. Doing this on my own, I've got a mile minute and like 5 different things on my mind. So I don't have all these names at me like right at the moment. Not exactly like, well, am I going for it or am I not going for it? So I had to commit to that. So thank you for having my back on that one. Finally, on the 25th, which I want to mention was at the Oda City Gymnasium in Tokyo with an attendance of 1,308, which was not great for a Friday night. Let's just say that. Attendance went up by a good 800 the next couple of days of the weekend. I don't know if it was the people on the card or if there was something else happening that night in town that people just thought was more interesting. But 1,308 for G1 Tokyo, not great at all. But you know what was great was Hiroshi Tanahashi defeating David Finlay in 16 minutes. Tanahashi's been delightful, and you know his limitations. You know what he can and can't do, and there are cringe moments. Sure, there are moments where it's like, oh man, you really do need to retire. But you're still getting those moments where it's like, you know what? I'm glad you're in the G1. You know, like this may not be the match of the night. Some of them have been match of the night. And he's got a couple of opportunities at the end of the night to grab the microphone and address the crowd. And you know what? This was another one. And I don't think a whole lot of people had Tanahashi beating David Finlay. I don't think a whole lot of people had David Finlay on a losing streak going into the second half of the G1. But here we are, Finlay defeated by Tanahashi with an inside cradle. And I think we might be on a path for David Finlay to no longer be running things with Ghetto. I don't know if it's Bullet Club. I don't know if whatever. But if he can't pull this one out, I feel like a certain Jake Lee might be coming down the line to really set things straight for New Japan and let him know how things should be run. If that's not happening, it should. All right. Any thoughts about night 5, the July 25th show before I move on, everybody? Nope. All right. Let's move on to the July 26th. We had this was a 4-match card. Yes, it was. The images still had Gabe Kidd on there because I had to pull them from Twitter and they had not updated yet. But we had 4 matches. The attendance was 2,250 people. Again, from the Oda City Gymnasium, just a huge bump in attendance. So it was just a one-night thing. Why, where, how, whatever, don't know. Couldn't tell you. Not sure it matters other than it happened. And then we got the trickle back up the next night. So first match on the card was Great-O-Khan defeating Yoshihashi. At this point, Yoshihashi was one of the front runners in the block. And this is one of those bracket evening out kind of matches where people lose an opportunity to gain 2 points as well as other people gain 2 points. And all of a sudden, the swing in the bracketing tends to happen. And depending on where you were doing on the G1 Sport of Pro Wrestling thing, like you probably had Great-O-Khan defeating Yoshihashi, but those people probably didn't have Yoshihashi on a hot win streak a couple matches before this. So it is what it is. I thought this match was just fine. I think it was forgotten and overshadowed by a couple other matches on this card. Colin Matthews says, even Great-O-Khan's matches have been good. I have been overhyping them to some extent. I think the Takeshita match was actually really divine, and he knows his role as like a powerhouse and like a bruiser and a big man on the roster. And this is usually the time where they unleash him. So I enjoy seeing the Great-O-Khan matches because his strength is being one of the heavies in the whole thing. All right. Second match that we had tonight, divine match. Some people I've said it, maybe one of the best matches on the G1. I'd be curious to see what match people will have ranked above and below this one. But we're talking Zack Sabre Jr. and El Phantasmo. It went 19 minutes and 20 seconds. And the best way I can put it is El Phantasmo was very froggy during this match, in which you saw the signs of El Phantasmo jumping and bouncing around the ring because he had a base and a talent with Zack Sabre Jr., who could do really, really creative things with him in the ring with submissions and conversions and counters and reversals and chokes and arm locks. And there are people that will tell you they absolutely love this match, and it was their favorite match of the evening. There are other people that will tell you that Konosuke Takeshita versus Shingo Takagi, that we get to later on, was the best match of the evening. It really is a personal preference. I've really liked Shota Umino matches through the entirety of this tournament, and if the next match didn't infuriate me so much, I'd be talking about that one as well. But we are talking about Zack Sabre Jr. and El Phantasmo, and Zack Sabre Jr. is booked at a certain level. El Phantasmo is booked at a certain level. You got the IWGP World Champion, and you've got the TV Champion. The result of this was never really in question, but they really made you work for it. These guys work tremendously well because they don't get an opportunity to get in the ring with each other all that often. They are familiar with each other, but they're both exceptionally talented, and this is a match that you should make time to go out of your way to see. And I'll leave it at that. Let's see here. How did he... It was a modified Dragon Sleeper, and there's been a lot of submission wins by Zack Sabre Jr. in here. He's probably got most submission wins of anyone in this entire tournament. The next match we had was Shota Umino and Ren Narita. I really like Shota Umino in this tournament, and he has been my sleeper to be, that guy that makes it into post-block play whenever it's kind of written him off. And from everything that I've seen in this tournament, I feel like that was a really good call. Ren Narita defeated Shota Umino in this match. It was the first time Ren Narita has ever defeated Shota Umino. It was a House of Torture ending after a really solid match in which Shota Umino countered the House of Torture interference at least twice before falling prey to it a third time. Protected as much as possible, and the rehabilitation tour really feels like it's back in effect with Shota Umino, and I like to see it. This match was suffering from the House of Torture crap, but I think that post G1, I wouldn't be shocked if Shota Umino and Ren run this one back with a different result. And then we had Shingo Takagi versus Konosuke Takeshita in a 24-minute gem of a match in which you'll remember these two wrestled at the Tokyo Dome. And it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It was like they left something on the table. And Takeshita actually had a better match with the Ishii the next night. Well, that wasn't the case here at the G1. These two had a banger. These two had a much better match than they did at Wrestle Kingdom. This was the 5-gear version of a car that upshifting from first to second to third to fourth to fifth. And these guys just went at it, and every 5 minutes, you're just going up a gear. And we ended this match with Takeshita choking out Shingo with a cross-face chicken wing, and it was stopped by the referee. Shingo could not respond. His eyes went bulging. He was out, and Takeshita just looked like a monster. A fantastic match. Again, one of those matches that you should definitely check out. I tried to scream from the rooftops where I could that there were matches on this evening that you really should check out, and I stand by that. So, anybody have any thoughts about that? Throw them into the comments. Brad has one here. Takeshita winning matches with submissions has been a great change for him. Yeah, I think that really adds to his arsenal because he has the Blue Thunder Bomb and the Raging Fire and a couple of things. But now that you're doing the chicken wing and you're really incorporating, I don't want to say more of a Western tactic, but I feel like having Rocky there and being decidedly heel throughout this whole thing feels like the submissions were part of that transformation, if you will. I like it. I think it's especially strong. But I'm not sure where they're going to go with it. You know, like is he going to win the G1 with the submission? You know, like is it going to be like teasing with all this because it's like you have the submission, you can do the pinfall to win the whole thing, and I feel like you need a pinfall. And if you have a guy that's winning a lot of matches with submissions, I don't know. It's interesting, you know. Like I don't usually think about it like that. But maybe I should. And is teasing a submission at the very end before losing to a pinfall the way that you would want to, you know, crown that winner of the G1 this year? I don't know. Takeshita and Yota Tsuji both feel like top people in this, and you know, there's a couple of people. We'll get to some of the outlines and the way things can go in the next couple of days, but it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild some of the ways that the Gabe Kidd thing messed everything up. So that was July 26th, night 6 of the G1, and then we're going to July 27th, which was at Nagoya. Attendance was 2162, and the first match of the night was Boltin Oleg versus Yota Tsuji, which was, as I wrote, a meat match. Guys really just going hard at each other, and it didn't quite have that moment of like two titans, two of the biggest in New Japan, just because neither one really have that cachet yet. Like they're still building, you know. Like you wanted this match to happen in like a year, but it had to happen now. But when they meet up next time, it feels like then these two will have been in enough like big time moments that it's a big deal when they come back around. So match fell apart a little bit when Boltin tried to kamikaze off the top rope near the end of the match, and there was a decent botch. They recovered, went for kamikaze, Gene Blast, both kind of missed. And then Yota ended up winning with the Gene Blast. And it was a really good match. It was only 10 minutes. They went at a pretty fast sprint because they had a lot of people. The match lineup tonight was pretty heavy with a lot of talent up and down the board. So next one we had was Callum Newman and David Finlay. And I say those two names, and in the back of your head, you're like, upset, right? And the answer is yes. Yes, that was, in fact, an upset. Callum Newman defeated David Finlay on this evening with a, what type of thing was a Hurricane Rana. I'm sure Finlay loved losing to a Hurricane Rana, but it is what it is. And so he played the part of, you know, shocked, dismayed, upset. And at this point, he's got one win and 3 losses in the G1. And you know what? Ghetto's not happy. Ghetto's chirping. Ghetto's chirping about all this. And you know what? We're going somewhere with this. So I think this was one of those Newman got something out of this match by beating Finlay, but I also feel like beating Finlay isn't as big a deal as it was a year ago. You know, like he's no longer the big bad guy in New Japan. He's got a little bit of a babyface edge to him. Like he's not wrestling like an all-out heel. And when we get to the Hiroshi Tanahashi versus David Finlay match, I actually thought it was decidedly interesting how unheelish he was through that entire thing. So we'll get to that at some point as well. So the next match on there was Sanada defeating Taichi. And officially Masatori Yasuda is now with Taichi, just helping him out. And Sanada was wearing white, you know, just to taunt Taichi. It was a fun match. They're playing off history, Milano collection, and Taichi got in there and did some double team moves on Sanada, which got the crowd hot. It's like there were people there that understood the history and the lineage of some of these guys. And so Taichi versus Sonata both tapped into it and let New Japan know that, yes, the fandom may be down, but the people remember. Like, they remember this. And this did well because of both of these men's history on the roster. And so I liked it. I thought it was good. But it wasn't, if you're coming into the G1 and you're looking for these matches, and I talk about the delightfulness of this match, and you're just coming into it first time, it's gonna be cold for you. It's not quite gonna hit it in quite the way that, like, you're looking for a Takeshita match to really just lighten up your soul in a way. So that's why I would say it's more insider pleasing to New Japan lore. The more you have appreciation for the backstory, because it feels like a deep cut match. That's the best way to put it. A deep cut match. All right, next one up, we had Yuya Uemura defeating Evil. And pretty standard babyface against the House of Torture. Interference, but I will say, to the credit of Yuya, the crowd was with him the entire time. Yuya overcame everything and got Evil with the deadfall. And it was a surprise. I didn't expect Yuya to beat him. You know what I mean? Like, the way that Evil has been kind of running the table, and Yuya still just hasn't had those definitive wins. Then, well, here you go. You just got a definitive win against Evil. It was pretty fantastic. And this was the match where I was looking at him like, could this guy be the guy? Like, he was in TNA and he wasn't doing much. And he came out and he joined just 5 guys, and they didn't really unleash him until after G1, and then he had the elbow thing. And you almost kind of forgot how good he was in that G1 because he just had to move on. And, like AEW and WWE, in the wrestling world, you just, if you're forgotten, you're forgotten. And to this guy's credit, he's waited, he's bided his time, and he has come out here and he's had matches with Yota Tsuji, he's had matches with Evil, he's had great matches across the board, and I'm just feeling it with this guy. And I am super stoked, and they could go pretty far with them. And this is where I'm kind of sitting here thinking, yeah, this G1 is good. I'm enjoying matches every night. There's at least 2 matches, like I said, each night that are really good, and the floor is really high. But then I think about Ryo Heiwa a year later, Yuya Uemura a year later, this version of Shota Umino a year later, Yota Tsuji a year later, Ren Narita a year later. Next year's G1 could be pretty good if they have to focus on the future, and they don't have Naito, and they don't have Tanahashi, and there's no Ibushi, and there's no Okada, and there's no Ospreay, and there's no Jay White. Like, their backs are against the wall. They have to make new stars. There's no Jeff Cobb. There's no Tongans anymore. Like the GOD. They're all gone. You're gonna have Hinare back, and Hinare, they're gonna have to do the same thing you did with Yuya. They're gonna have to rehabilitate him, and they're gonna have to get him to that point. And so I'm excited for next year because I'm seeing what they're doing with this year, and I just feel like you can just run with the wheels off completely. So that's how I feel about that. And then the main event was in a 14-minute match. Ryohei Oiwa defeats Hiroshi Tanahashi. And all I wrote while I was watching this match was, I feel like I'm watching someone deconstruct Tanahashi methodically. Just tore him apart and knew exactly what he needed to do in order to win this match. And, you want to play that storyline that he's been mentored by Zack Sabre Jr., who, oh my God, has Tanahashi's number. And with Oiwa's brute strength and that approach, it's probably pretty easy to take apart Tanahashi at this point. So I really liked the psychology of that match, and I thought it was really, really strong. Overall, a really good night of action, and so we have the last night of matches that I had to review with us today. We'll get to that right now. That is night 8. Rocky and Walker were on commentary. We had B block action, and Yoshihashi had a bye this evening because Gabe Kidd had the forfeit. First match that we had on the evening was Great-O-Khan versus ELP. Kind of an underrated gem of a match. We can run back the Great-O-Khan winning with a super eliminator off the top rope, but running back ELP and Great-O-Khan is kind of a reliable, old faithful kind of thing. And so I enjoyed it. Like I said, I thought it was an underrated gem. People are going to overlook it because of the other matches that were on this card. But both of these guys have had a really good campaign, and I thought this was a really good match as well. And so you should make time to check that out. The next one we had was Drilla Maloney defeated Ren Narita in 9 minutes and 52 seconds. I kind of would have expected Ren to beat Drilla just because of the Bullet Club House of Torture thing. But Ren's been getting a lot of wins, and Drilla kind of needed a win here. And so they're really getting the Drilla Killer over. And every match that Drilla wins, he has won devastatingly with that move. And so I think that coming out of the G1, even if he doesn't end up in the top 3 or anything like that, I think he's solidified himself as a player in New Japan, especially because, I've got nothing to base this on, but I'm vibing Gabe Kidd and Finley not really being around, come February, and they kind of have to get somebody in that position. And Drilla kind of feels like you could kick the tires on him and he might stick around. So keep an eye on him and the opportunities there. So I'm going to take a swig real quick. The next match we had here tonight was Shingo Takagi versus Shota Umino. 22 minutes, 45 seconds. A fantastic match. If you'll remember, the last time the two met was at the New Japan Cup 2025 semifinal where Shota Umino won. Based off of that, you're probably thinking, oh yeah, Shingo Takagi won this match, didn't he? Like, yep, Shingo Takagi did in fact win this one and ran it back, but I did not mean to say that Shota Umino lost this match. Shingo barely won it, kind of thing. He won with the Burning Dragon. Rocky during commentary said that Shota has put on 25 pounds of muscle, maybe jokingly, maybe not entirely sure, but I feel like this has been a low-key rehabilitation tour of Shota Umino, and I don't know when and how he managed to put this much beef on him without anyone really noticing, but my goodness, it just feels like a different, more aggressive, I don't want to say more confident, but more secure version of Shota Umino that we've seen before. So for what it's worth, maybe he's figuring it out in some way, shape, or form. And then the main event in what was a fantastic match, as you could probably guess when I say Zack Sabre Jr. and Takeshita had a match. And boy, howdy, did they have a match. Zack Sabre Jr. ended up choking out Takeshita in a Blue Thunder Bomb counter after 22 minutes and 37 seconds. And when I tell you he choked out Takeshita, I tell you that Takeshita went for a Blue Thunder. Zack got behind him, put him in a choke, had him on the ground. Takeshita then slowly, grudgingly climbed up with Zack on his back to do a top rope backdrop in which he desperately tried to get Zack off of him. Zack did get off of him, then immediately reapplied the hold, put him in another submission, and then eventually just destroyed him, in which Takeshita had to tap out into that modified sleeper. It was fantastic. The whole sequence went about 2 minutes. And I would not recommend doing the long submission tap out spot. But if you're going to do it, this is how you do it. You do the desperation. You do the fight. You do everything in your power to get out of this hold. And there's nothing that you can do until you just have to give up because you are exhausted and winded, and everything that you have done up to that point has failed, and you have lost this match, and there is nothing left to do other than quit. That is what happened in this match. So what did Brad say about this? Zack Sabre Jr. and Takeshita was a bit rough at times, but it made the match so much better. It felt like a true battle between incredible wrestlers who are doing everything to win. Yeah, it was gritty. It felt a little MMA-ish. One of the things that I enjoyed at the very end was as the match is over, Zach grabs the mic and he goes, "You may be the alpha, but I'm the bleeping world champion." And you're just sitting there, you're just like, I like that. Ooh, I like that a lot. It's like maybe they'll run it back. Maybe we're gonna have a bit of joy on this one in the future. But for these two and the first time out, it was like, this is what I wanted it to be. And it was also, the moment where it's like, okay, we are in the G1. Maybe I'm still at a 7 out of 10. Maybe it's not like 8 or 9, or I'm in overdrive and everything is like my blood pumping in every day and I'm G1. It's not like that. But when I sit down and I watch these matches and I make the time for it, I'm like, God damn, that was a good match. You know what I mean? Like, I'm texting people. I'm telling them, like, hey, you need to check out this match. Like, I'm thinking about the other matches on that I've watched and how they made me feel. And do these make me feel like a couple of the matches have? The Great Okan Takeshita match felt like it woke me up out of a coma when I was watching it because I was so tired. And then all of a sudden, like, oh man, this one's a winner. It just kind of wakes you up, kind of thing. And we've had a few matches throughout this entire G1, and I'd like to hear from you in the chat. If you have a few matches that you like, I'll throw them up on the screen. Tell me the ones that you've thought have been your favorite up to this point, and we'll talk about it. But in the meantime, I am going to. What am I doing here? Going to the brackets. So right now, we've got matches tomorrow. Today's the 31st, and we're going to have matches on August 1st. Let's see here. Callum Newman versus Sonata. Ryohei Oiwa versus Evil. Bolton Oleg versus David Finlay. Taichi versus Yota Tsuji. And Tanahashi versus Yuya Uemura. So if you're looking at this, you see that Yota Tsuji is in the lead with 8. And that could change easily tomorrow, in which several people could tie him if he manages to be felled by Taichi, which honestly, probably not out of the question if we're really thinking about it. And so people who are still in it, in all honesty, in this one, Evil, David Finlay, Yuya Uemura, Tanahashi, Taichi, Bolton, Sonata might still kind of be in it. Like there are people that you rule out just because like you kind of don't think Sonata is going to have a shot here. Callum Newman, not really going to have a shot here. But at the same time, you've got David Finlay at 2. And can he get to 10 and squeeze in? Or is failing at the very end what's going to happen to him, and it's going to cost him, his leadership? I don't think you do that at the end of the G1. I think you have him squeeze in and then lose in post-block play, and then that all kind of de-escalates or escalates later on, because I think you want to keep the G1 matches a little bit more pure. But he's got matches with Yuya Uemura. He's got matches with Oleg. He's got matches with Yota Tsuji, and he's got a match with Evil. I think he can win all of those matches and win 10 points. Very easily, especially since I think his last match is with Yuya Uemura. So it's basically like, do they go Uemura or do they go Finlay? on that last night. And it's my gut says Finley, like Finley, Evil, Tsuji feel like the top three. And if you guys remember back in like February, let's see, back in February, Finley, Evil, and Yota Tsuji all stood in the ring together while Finley had the global title. And they were all barking at each other. So they never really paid that off. You've had Finley and Yota Tsuji kind of. They ran that back earlier, but you haven't really had Yota Tsuji and Evil other than this match in which Evil won in the G1. And so you got all three of them here. And if there's kind of this round robin thing where all three of them end up back in the post block play, I just feel like that's how you close that loop, or even extend in like a double loop post G1. Because when you put three people in the ring in a New Japan show, there's a deliberate reason. And if you don't do anything about that and they're all still around, you're just waiting for that to be paid off. Right? And I've thought about those three standing in the ring back when that all happened. And I'm just like, yeah, they got to do something with this. And I feel like they didn't really do anything with it when Evil and Tsuji had their match a couple of weeks ago in the G1. So do they run it back in post-block play? Does one of these people not make it in? I don't know, but I feel like just the G1 block is not an escalated scenario enough for all of this to be put to rest. And just matches after the G1 also don't feel that way. So that's kind of what I'm hedging. That's kind of where I'm thinking about all that. And so I think Tanahashi, he's got this narrative of winning 100 matches. It's entirely possible he wins 2 more because he's at 99 right now. He goes 100, and then he goes 101. Losing, winning Yuya Uemura or winning against Sonata. But that last match for Tanahashi is against Evil, and I've thought about it in my head a few times, and it just doesn't feel like the right story for Tanahashi is to be the hero that stops Evil. We've already done that. That was the whole story of Wrestle Kingdom, where, President Tanahashi risk retirement, do the lumberjack match. Evil's going to go away after this. And, he didn't go away. He just came back in a different form because, that's what Evil does. But you already did that Wrestle Kingdom. So are you going to have Tanahashi win to stop Evil from getting into the G1? Because getting into G1 post-block play? Because, look, think about this here. Evil, in all honesty, is the baddest of the bad guys in New Japan Pro Wrestling. And if you don't have the baddest of the bad guys in the post-block play, you don't have an opportunity for the good guy to overcome him. Right? Like, this is all just narrative stuff where it's like, you want to be angry that this guy is going to the post-block play. Now he's in the post-block play. Now you want to see the good guy stop it. Storytelling 101, the whole deal. And so I'm looking at Evil, Tsuji, and Finlay making it in there. I originally had Finlay winning the block and Tsuji being second and Evil squeezing in. But, if Evil, Tsuji, and Finlay does it in that order, it just feels like those are the three guys. Uemura, Tanahashi, Taichi. Uemura is the only other guy of those that has a shot, but it doesn't feel like he's getting a lot in the block play, right? He's getting a lot of shine. He's made to look like a star, but I don't think that star is shining past August 10th, if that makes any sense. Brad here says, I need a Finlay run to make my bracket still work, so I'm pulling for him getting the story of winning out after a rough start. Yeah, it's really interesting to have Finley positioned as like a quasi babyface and like a babyface quest. Like you need him to like you're wanting to win. Like the closer he gets, you're slowly getting on his side because he's not doing anything wrong in these matches. You know, that Tanahashi match that he did. Like he was talking about like Tanahashi pulling his hair. Like he wanted a fair fight. Like he was willing to fight dirty if Tanahashi was, but he wasn't the one escalating it. It more felt like Tanahashi was escalating it because Tanahashi wanted to win. And so I thought there was an interesting psychology there. And so now you're in a position where it's like you're kind of rooting for Finley to like pull this out, and you're kind of rooting for Evil to not win. You know, like you're just kind of like it's a psychological minefield that they're doing, because at the very end you're gonna have Finley or Uemura. It's like one is a win and get in, and the other isn't. And at that point, does Finley go back to being a guy that you don't like because you really want to see Uemura in? That's the insidiousness of the G1 in all honesty. And so yeah, I see Finley being like that guy, but I could also see that like they do the shock thing and Finley is out, because this year has definitely been about tempering your expectations with David Finley. Let's see. Brad here says, I'm going to be so pissed if Tana is at 99 going to the Evil match. If Evil beats him, leaving Tana at 99 wins, I'm never watching New Japan again until the next show and complain for days on Twitter. Not going to lie, you had me in the first half, but I covered in the second half. I think that the way that these blocks are set up, that Tanahashi is going to have kind of like that momentum going into it rather than being like the loser and can he pull one out at the end. It just makes a lot of sense that way. And I'm kind of leaning toward that personally. So, all right, what else we got here? We got the B block. There we are. So, in the B block, Yoshihashi, Great Okan, Drilla Maloney, and Ren Narita all have 8 points, as we all predicted. With 6 points, we got Shota Umino, Zack Sabre Jr., and Takeshita. And at 4 points, we had LP and Shingo Takagi. Now, I'm not going to lie, I was pretty excited when Filthy Tom and Brian Alvarez were talking about my notes on the G1, and I had wrote ELP, and Tom corrected both Brian and myself, and no, it's LP. And I was like, son of a bitch, I never realized that. Because I just ELP, LP. And it was like EL is the LP. And I was like, yeah, I feel pretty dumb about that one, not gonna lie. So yeah, check out Wrestling Observer Live on Monday if you want to hear Speaking of Strong Style, my own show get shouted out by Brian Alvarez and him calling me a good guy, which honestly was the nicest thing he could have said. Made me a little happy. Mattered more to me than me giving the notes. Just somebody complimenting me on being a good person. I think that's good. I like that. So, B block action. B block. We got a couple of scenarios here that, you know, for me personally, it looks like Zack Sabre Jr. probably going to have a pretty aggressive back half of this tournament. For my money, I still feel like Zack Sabre Jr., Shota Umino, and Takeshita are the three to make it into the rest of this. And, you know, with Kid being out, everyone gets a ton of points. And so Zach is going to end up with, you know, could end up with 12 or 14. A couple of these people are going to end up with 12, more than the others. But, you know, Maloney, Ren, Great Okan, ELP, they could all end up with 8 or 10 points, even though they only have, you know, 4s and 6s and whatever right now. Maloney, he might only win one more match. The way that this is all staged out, like you don't really believe that Maloney and Ren and Great Okan. Yes, Great Okan went last year to the post-block play but he did it as a surprise. Like you I don't think you run it back the same surprise. And to me, if you're going to do parody in New Japan, you have as many different factions as possible. So you have your Bullet Club War Dog in David Finlay. You have your House of Torture and Evil. You have that unaffiliated LIJ remnant in Yota Tsuji. You have Hontai in Shota Umino. You have the AEW guy in Takeshita. And you have the world champion, a.k.a. TMDK and Zack Sabre Jr. Unfortunately, not a whole lot of room to eat at the table for the United Empire. Great O'Khan and Cal Newman just don't have that cachet. And you think about all the other guys like Taichi, Tanahashi, they feel like they have a chance, but like Yuya Uemura feels like it's either Yuya or it's Shota, and it feels like it might be Shota this year. Like they've been strong on Shota always, like they believe in the Nepo baby, if you want to call him that. But he's put on the muscle. It feels like they're working something with him and they have an opportunity. And if Uemura is not going to win it this year, it's okay if he doesn't go into post-block play, because I want you to go all unhinged next year and have these guys just have all the young guys go to post-block play. I want Oiwa back. I want Shota. I want Yoda. I want Umino. I want all of them in post-block play. I want heels. I want baby faces. But I just want a consensus of young guys just taking the world by storm next year at the G1. It doesn't seem like it's booked to happen that way this year. But, man, if we can just get, like, a youth revolution and just make a star among all the stars and just ready to go, that's what I'm looking at now. Like, I'm looking at a G1 a year from now where it's just like, oh, my God, these young guys are here and they're going to tear shit up. You know what I mean? Like, just tear it up. This is what I'm at with that. And I think that we have a lot of really good matches coming up. And so I'm not sure we're going to go a whole 90 minutes today because I don't know. I just don't feel like I have everything that I need. I've kind of powered through everything, if you will. So let's look at the upcoming matches. I talked about them previously, but we got on August 1st, we're going to have Callum Newman versus Sonata in the ambiguously cool-off match of the show. We're going to have Ryohei Oiwa versus Evil, which could be the upset special. You feel like there's an opportunity for Oiwa to just kind of, get one over on Evil, but at the same time, Evil kind of needs that winning streak. And so if you want Evil into the post-block play, he kind of has to win some of these matches because of the tiebreakers that he has could cost him. Otherwise, he's lost to Finlay and he's lost to Uemura. So the strength of schedule has him he's either winning or because of those other two guys, he's out of it completely. So it's kind of a silly way that it's worked out with him, but it is what it is. Bolton Oleg versus David Finlay. I think because of the David Finlay, story of, the chase, and he's got to win all his matches out to have a chance. I think I'm leaning towards David Finlay on this one. So would not be shocked on that one. And then we have, what else we got here? Taichi versus Yota Tsuji. And this is one of those, whoever wins this match is probably getting into the G1. We're got 2 or 3 matches left after this, and this is like a momentum match. If you win this, you really only need to win one more. But if you lose this, your back is against the wall, and you pretty much have to win out. That's kind of the scenario that you find yourself in when we're on the back half of this one. So I feel like this is going to be probably a pretty consequential and probably a pretty good semi-main event on this one. And then the main event is going to be Yuya Uemura versus Hiroshi Tanahashi. Now, if you've got a memory for this at all, you'll remember that Yuya Uemura and Hiroshi Tanahashi actually had a match at Dominion where Hiroshi Tanahashi won. And we all thought it was inexplicable until you were like, yeah, let's go see if the G1's happening and if they're in the same block. And lo and behold, they are. And so I would presume to think Yuga is probably winning this match. And it will be the last time that these two meet in competition in New Japan Pro Wrestling. The following night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, we're going to have 4 matches in which, let's see here, going to be Shota Umino versus Yoshihashi, in which Shota Umino, if he's going to want to win out and make post-block play, he's going to kind of need to win this one because, like I said with the matches on the last one, it's the Yota Tsuji Taichi one. It's like we're in that period where you kind of have to win, and all of the block matches are all really skewed. Some people have 5 matches left, some people have 4 matches left because of the Gabe Kidd forfeit. Fine, it's whatever. The math typically works out, but I still think that we're probably going to have outcomes in which, even if the points are skewed at the top, you generally have people in the bookings that you want them to be in. So the next one we'll have is El Phantasmo and Shingo Takagi, which feels like an El Phantasmo match in order to kind of shred Shingo's momentum. But if you have Shingo win this one, you get him in a position where he's chasing to get in, much like Finlay. But if you do that story, one of them should get in and one of them shouldn't. Both people shouldn't get in on a chase like that because you're doing the same story twice. And if I had my money on this one, I'm kind of leaning towards Shingo being the one to be out of the dance at the end, if I had to a way to put that. And then we're going to have Zack Sabre Jr. versus Great-O-Khan, which I kind of feel like the Great-O-Khan could win, and then Zack Sabre Jr. doesn't win the block. It would be more interesting that way, but I kind of think Zack Sabre Jr. could win. But at the same time, there aren't a whole lot of surprises with the wins and losses if Zack Sabre Jr. loses this one. This could be the shocking one of the night. So I'm kind of going to lean Great-O-Khan because it doesn't mess up the bracketing. In all honesty, it doesn't mess up the bracketing at all. The same 3 guys would make it, just in a different order. And then let's see, we got 2 more shows after that. We're gonna have a total of 5 shows to recap coming into next Thursday, in which Steven is going to be back. The last matches that I have written down are for Sunday, but we're going to have a Tuesday and a Thursday show that we'll be talking about. And that will be August 2nd, August 3rd. That'll be August 7th, in which after that, we will have the finals for the A block on August 10th, the finals for the B block on August 13th, and we will have the first night of post-block play to recap 2 weeks from now. So we've been going through the G1. We've been doing everything that we've been trying to do on this one. And frankly, it's been working at a good clip. I think it's been pretty upsetting to have Gabe Kidd, have to bow out of this tournament. But I also don't think that, the quality of the tournament has dipped because Gabe Kidd. Gabe Kidd, I feel like needed the tournament more than the tournament needed Gabe Kidd based off of how well everyone else has been working in this tournament. It would have brought eyeballs onto the tournament. It would have been a lot of fun, but maybe it wouldn't have. Maybe people were just like, oh, check out the Gabe Kidd match if there's a good recommendation on it, and they don't get the New Japan World subs for this. So it's hard to say, but for what it's worth, I think that the G1 has been a tremendously fun ride up to this point. And so the A block action on Sunday is going to be Bolton Oleg versus Callum Newman. We got Taichi versus Ryohei Oiwa, Yuya Uemura versus Sanada, David Finlay versus Evil, and then Yota Tsuji versus Tanahashi. After that, we're going to have August 5th, and that's going to be El Phantasmo versus Drilla Maloney, Konosuke Takeshita versus Yoshihashi, Shingo Takagi versus Zack Sabre Jr., and Ren Narita versus Great Khan. Brad, I see your question, and I'm going to get to that in just 1 second. And then the last night of matches that we're going to review for next week's show is going to be Sonata versus Hiroshi Tanahashi, Taichi versus Cal Newman, Yuya Uemura versus Ryohei Oiwa, Oleg Bolton versus Evil, and then Yota Tsuji versus David Finlay. So, I think where we're at on that one. Let's see here. All right. Brad asked, obviously we have time. Yes, we do. We may not go the full 90, but we're going to go a little bit of it. Who do you think is getting a shot at Zack Sabre Jr. at the next big show after the G1? So, right now, Zack Sabre Jr. has lost to Ren Narita and Shota Umino. Yeah. I think Ren. I think Ren's the first guy. I think Shota Umino is going to get a crack after that. And I think whoever beats Zack Sabre Jr. in the post-block play is going to get the crack at him in October. And I think it's entirely possible that that person is evil. Could be Takeshita. If you keep Takeshita and Yota Tsuji away from each other in the G1, and then Takeshita were to beat Zack Sabre Jr. in post-block play, and then they do one more match, and Takeshita wins, you could do Yota Tsuji versus Takeshita at the Tokyo Dome. I am very much of the opinion that it is absolutely foolhardy to go back into the Tokyo Dome with Zack Sabre Jr. as the IWGP World Champion, given last year's results. And yes, you have Tanahashi's retirement. And Tanahashi's retirement can be a big deal. But you do not want to jeopardize the optics of Tanahashi's retirement, having a flat card, a flat audience, a flat anything, because you were complacent on the main event born out of the G1. Tokyo Dome is still a big deal. It's like you think about January 4th. I'm going to go. I'm getting my passport all squared away. I'm super excited about all of this. But I am trying in my mind to think out who retires Tanahashi, who is going to be the IWGP champion, and who's going to challenge the G1. To me, it makes a lot of sense that Yota Tsuji is the G1 challenger, but maybe somebody else wins and we do the October surprise where they challenge Zack Sabre Jr. Like, no, I want my shot in October. Could Zack Sabre Jr. go to the finals, lose, and then this person does that? It doesn't feel exciting. You want an anticipation of this match to happen and not be the third time it's happened in the last couple of months. But if they're looking for a little bit of chaos and a little bit of things are unsettled coming out of the G1 and going into the Tokyo Dome, there's a lot that you can do in which you get that belt off of Zack Sabre Jr. And maybe that was the whole plan, is you get the belt on him because you want that to be the guy, not Goto, when it all happens. Who knows? Not entirely 100% sure. But that's kind of where I'm at on this, in which I think he's going to have 3 challengers. I'm also thinking about Forbidden Door. You feel like you're going to be in England. It's going to be a week after the G1. They talked a lot of crap. Do you think that we're going to have a Takeshita, Zack Sabre Jr. run it back in a tag or something like that? Proto-Shida versus Zack Sabre Jr. and somebody. There are people on the roster that you can just grab and go and see if there's a match that a work rate match. I'd love to see it. Who's that guy? I don't know if you're gonna do an IWGP title match if you've got Ren Narita waiting or Shota Umino waiting. Maybe you can do Shota Umino versus Zach at Forbidden Door. But at the same time, Forbidden Door doesn't really feel like a New Japan show. Like it feels like guest starring New Japan. Sometimes like important stuff happens there, but it's a storyline measure in which the payoff is on New Japan programming. So I don't know, but I feel like Zack Sabre Jr., one of the three people that Zack Sabre Jr. loses to in the G1, 3 or 4, whatever it may be, he may lose the title to that person. So just keep that in the back of your head and see if there's like people. And, if you get that queasy feeling, if like the stars start to align in which, there's a trace from evil to Zack Sabre Jr. in the post-block play, and you're like, oh no. And you're like, oh, yeah. Good versus evil. Evil. That's where we're at right now. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? Any other stuff musing? Brad, you got a couple of good questions here. Anybody else here? Because I may wrap it up here. Feel pretty proud of myself doing the hour and 10 minutes. I feel like I covered all the stuff. Oh, here's what we got. We got the show for next week. Steven's going to be back. I'm also doing night 1 of SummerSlam coverage with Garrett Gonzalez on Saturday night, as well as night 2 coverage will be by the rap team of Keela, Cash, and Salty Scott, and they'll be covering all that. I'll be honest with you, I have no idea what's on that card. I watched Raw. I don't watch SmackDown anymore, and I've realized that you don't need to watch SmackDown to go into a WWE PLE. In fact, it's a feature, not a bug. So I stopped paying the USA Network to watch SmackDown. If I need to, I'll do the YouTube clips. But we're gonna watch a show together, and then at 8:00 Pacific on Saturday night, I will be back. Garrett will be back. We will be talking about that. Maybe if somebody asks me a G1 question in the middle of SummerSlam, I don't expect that to happen. We can pontificate about that, but yeah, I'm a man of many talents and many discussions, and of those discussions, it's going to be WWE after pontificating again about New Japan Pro Wrestling for the last 75 minutes. Yeah. So again, check out Paul Fontaine's recommendations. You can listen to him on the Dynamite Show and on the Discord. If you are listening to this, we have a Discord in which I would love to build up the New Japan area of content and discussion. We have people like Chris Samsa, the Sport of Pro Wrestling, that comes in and talks about that. We have Paul Fontaine. We have Brad. Plenty of people just come in. They ask questions, they dip their toes in the section and have a conversation. But we have plenty of bustling opportunities there. And so if you want to join the Discord, go ahead and, send an email to GG at fightgamemedia.com. He is the purveyor of all those invites, and we'll get you in there. It's a pretty toxic free environment, just making sure that we don't police you, but you need to police yourself and make sure that you comport and compose yourself, in an adult and mature manner. Basically, if you come on this show and you see the way that we handle ourselves here, just try and keep the vibe kind of like that. Don't be mean. Don't be mean-spirited. Be honest. Be critical. You can do what you can say the mean stuff as long as it's wrapped in a reason that has context and is an explanation for trying to get better. So that's what I would say about that. But yes, other than that, Steven will be back next week. Don't forget to check out the ringsidereplay.com, which is all of Steven's historical stuff right there. I have one more comment here. Brad says, great job going solo tonight. Thank you, buddy. I want to tell you the story of when I went solo doing the AEW post show a couple weeks ago for All In. And at the last minute, my podcast partner that I had set up 4 months in advance told me that he could not join me, and then I hurriedly scrounged for a guest host, and thankfully I got about, I think, 3 or 4 different people to hop on and kind of do a little, like, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Got Kevin Ely in that night, BJ Bethel, Keela Cash came on. It was a really good time, and we had a lot of fun talking. But halfway through the show, and I realized this afterwards, and I couldn't put a video clip up for anything that we talked about because something glitched out on StreamYard. And I didn't notice, but the AEW post-show logo suddenly turned into Garrett and John Laraka's The Fight Game podcast on Wrestling Observer Radio. And obviously that's not correct, but I was so locked in and in the zone that I had no idea that the background had glitched or that, like, my mouse had clicked over something. And so the entirety of the back half of this show has this on there until like 5 minutes before the end of the show. And this thing went on for like an hour and 45 minutes. Just wild stuff. Let's see. Brad said the Toro Yano versus Super Satsadanga match is officially up on Wrestle Universe on demand. You're gonna have to let me know how that one is. It was not on my radar to go into that, but I don't know. You guys want to hear the story of Dave Meltzer's newsletter going down and me being there at the time? Because that was fun. This was a few weeks ago, and if you remember, Dave, his newsletter, like, there was a blurb sent out that, like, the newsletter wasn't going to come out because of a glitch. And I was over there setting up his video rig because it too had been victims of bad actors on the internet, and there was a very specific video hard drive hub on the back of the video screen for Wrestling Observer at his house that they used to dial in and get him going, because you've heard the stories of the internet on Dave's house. So I've got this thing, I'm setting it up on the back of his thing, and I just hear Dave go, "Oh no." And something happened between the power being cut out because of maintenance being done with the electrical in his neighborhood, and he had saved the document, but he hadn't saved, like, he saved the document, but he made a mistake. And sometimes with his computer, you have a temp file, but because he shut down the computer, the temp file was gone. And so there was nothing that he could do to recover this thing. And he was really upset. And it's like you're putting your heart, your soul into this thing for like a week, and it's gone. And so he was really upset. And, you know, like, I spent another hour there just trying to, like, find it and look for it, and it wasn't happening, right? Like, temp files on, and I'm using an Apple, and God bless him, I haven't used a Windows like system in probably 10, 15 years. And it's like, I know how to ride a bike, you know, I know how to use like a Windows and look for the file manager and look for temp files, all that stuff. Just wasn't happening. And the only reason I was there is because it was really important to me that Dave had a good interview with Kenny Omega the next day. And so I'm talking to him after, like, this is all just like, all right, well, I think I got your video rig set up. If that's any, like, consolation, it's like, why don't you just cobble together the best stuff that you have and do that? Like, oh, I can't do that, you know, blah, 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 blah. Turns out the next day, that's exactly what he does. And everyone looks at Dave, and he's like, Miracle Dave, the Observer saved. 2 weeks later, he's writing a bio on Hogan in 12 hours that's 8 pages long. I mean, this is what this guy does, and he just kind of has to process when things go bad and figure out, like, how to make it better. And I am increasingly impressed with him when he does that, because he lets the water off the duck's back with all of these things. But it's like, there are things that will definitely upset him, and it's like losing a ton of work that he has done, like features that he's written, that he's never going to be able to match that work. You know, it's like those words, like he'll remember some of them, but the composure and the comment, it's all there. So I was only there to make sure that, you know, the Kenny Omega interview went off without a hitch. His TV had also broke. I was letting him use like a TV that I use for this show. I brought it over to his house so that he had a TV that he could watch all of his stuff from his vantage point. It was just one of the things. So if you ever heard that story at the end of the Kenny Omega interview where he said thank you to me and Garrett for the work that he did, that's actually the backstory of it. You know, it's like Dave Melker is legitimately my friend. I know that I have that like joke thing where it says Jer Finestone, aka Dave Melker's pay-per-view buddy. Guys, this is true. I've been hanging out with him since 2019, watching pay-per-views at his house, wearing a mask at his house during COVID, watching shows, sitting on his couch, being friends with his dog Espresso. It's on my Twitter profile. You can see pictures of me with this dog, all of these things. I consider myself lucky, but at the same time, like, it's just Dave. You know, like, there's no sense of like celebrity or reality or anything like meshing. Like, I think things are weird sometimes, but I also stay the hell off of Twitter if I don't have to be on there. I don't engage with all these people that like he engages with, and it's just, that's not my world. You know, like I enjoy coming and talking on the YouTube. I enjoy coming and talking in a Discord. What I don't like is, you know, standing from a rooftop from a social media account, hoping that whatever hot take that I have is aggregated and people think that what I have to say is important. I think what I have to say is important. I think this show, like what we say on the show, is important. And we try and measure what we say and how we act and how we treat you and treat other people and everyone that we come across with dignity and respect and basic human decency. And, you know, it's like calling somebody like on the wrestling show fat, you know, it's like it's the easy joke, right? But you talk about like the work rate that they do or the things that they can improve or how they can turn a negative into a positive or what you liked about a match or being critical without being hurtful. Like, those are the things that I think are important. You can elicit the reaction, but if you're coming out here on a show or in social media or whatever, and you're just trying to say something so that people respond to you, you're not adding anything to the conversation. You're not adding anything to the discourse. The people that get the traction, like the backup hangmans and, you know, the Sean Ross apps, like they have either information at their discretion or they have thoughtful takes in which make you think about the narrative of wrestling in general and make us all want to look at it from a different point of view that hopefully is a more positive point of view rather than a more negative. Because good Lord, there can be some toxicity in this world and in the wrestling community in general. But like, that's not what this show is. That's not what Fight Game Media is. That's not what any of like the people that I choose to associate myself with in the wrestling world is about. Like, these are hardworking men and women that are literally putting their bodies through a tremendous amount of pain to exhibit unbelievable feats of athleticism and agility, committing terrible, grievous pain against their body for our entertainment, to put a smile on our face, to get us to feel something. And maybe it's so that they can feel something too. You know, I don't want to get that philosophical on it, but it's like, to be cavalier, to be shitty, to take the easy route and like say the really like the low hanging fruit on like Chase Owens or Don Foley. It's like, yeah, we all know that like they're not the caliber of people that we want on this show. you see them and you think like Chase Owens, like there are other people on this roster that are working to be at the position that you're at. And I know that you are trying to maintain your role here, but I don't know what to tell you. Sometimes that's just the way the cookie grew. But you also, like, conscientiously, you don't want to be shitty about it. You don't want to be like, man, Chase, get out of here. You're the worst wrestler in the world. I can't wait to never see you again. It's like I'll have a laugh about him, like first time on the horse, and being abundantly clear. But I'm not going to tear the guy down, and I'm not going to go onto social media and tell him that his family sucks and that he shouldn't like try and put like food on the table, right? And she shouldn't try and get better at his craft. I don't know what that dude's ceiling is. I feel like I know what it is, but he could come out and surprise me tomorrow, and I would be happily take that stuff back. That's just kind of the mentality of the things that I think about when I try to approach, talking about wrestling, talking about, comic books and movies and the things that I like. There are things that I don't like about New Japan Pro Wrestling right now. I think I can be critical, but at the same time, like, I'm approaching this from both a storytelling and artistic and a business standpoint. And sometimes you can't be an auteur and make money. Like you got to keep it simple, stupid. And we have good guys and we have bad guys, and we're rebuilding the entire roster, and we're doing everything that we have to do. And so it is what it is. And I think that we are on the right track with the G1. I think the youth movement we're getting real momentum in seeing Oiwa and Ren and Yuya and Shota all getting a rehabilitated G1 this year. And it does feel like Yota Tsuji and Takeshita are kind of on a collision course for the biggest matches in New Japan going forward. And it feels like Evil's set up to be the big bad guy. And it feels like Finley is being set up to have matches with people that are currently on the injured list. And we have a lot of good things down the line. So I'm happy with it. Like I can keep doing this show as long as I can see as far as the eye can see. It's like I'm journaling the good and the bad about New Japan. Right now, not as much good as there was a couple years ago. Definitely a little bit more bad. But the authenticity comes from sticking this out day in and day out, watching the shows and saying, I was here when it wasn't good. I was here when it was good. I'll tell you why it's getting better, or I'll tell you why it's getting worse. And every day, I feel like that legitimacy is getting a little bit more just because, this is the 175th episode of this show. 175. I think we skipped a couple either because I was moving or it was like Thanksgiving or whatever, but we're just chugging along, man. And Steven's going to be back next week. We're going to get his thoughts about the stuff that happened this past week. We're going to talk about the 5 shows that we got. And maybe he'll tell us all the stuff that he did while he was gone. So I want to thank everybody for joining me today for the 90 minutes that we were here. I had a great time. Brad, Fernando, Colin, all you guys, Jeremy, Zach, Maria, thank you all for checking in. Don't forget to give a like and a subscribe if you hear this. I wish I would have said that at the beginning of the show rather than at the end. But I really like seeing more and more people listening and watching to this show because everything that I've been doing for the last couple weeks, be it sponsoring a prize for the G1 or getting the podcast name on there and submitting notes to Wrestling Observer Radio, just to get this podcast out here because I believe in it. I don't want to spend a whole lot of money, but I feel like any advertising is good advertising as long as the right people are talking about us in the right ways. And I thank you all for being supportive for that. And Fernando Diaz says we did. New Japan has lost a lot of talent for the last few years. Yes, sir, they have. That is a good note to end on because the talent that they are gaining right now isn't quite up to that point yet, but I think that they can get there. And with that, everybody, this has been Speaking of Strong Style. We are the Fight Game Media Network. I want to thank everyone for joining us this week, and we will talk to you again real soon.